you know him simply as Shaq. But before the championships, the MVPs, and the larger-than-life personality, there was the rookie from LSU who took the NBA by storm. In 1993, Shaquille O'Neal became only the fifth rookie in league history to start in an NBA All-Star game. Just months into his debut season, he wasn't just participating, he was commanding attention. Wearing an Orlando Magic jersey, he stepped onto the court like he'd been there for years. Cameras flashing, fans roaring, Shaq was right at home. At just 20 years old, he wasn't afraid of the spotlight. He welcomed it with that signature grin, the one that told you he was ready to dominate and have fun doing it. From the opening tip, he played with intensity and flair. He crashed the boards, bullied defenders in the paint, and made his presence known with every thunderous dunk. It wasn't just about the power, though he had plenty of that. It was the agility, the speed, the confidence. At 7 feet 1 inch and over 300 pounds, Shaq moved like a guard, ran the floor like a freight train, and electrified the crowd every time he touched the ball. And yet, even on a floor filled with legends, Shaq stood out. Not just for his size, but for his energy. He laughed, he celebrated. He played like a kid who had just stepped into a dream. And the fans loved him for it. That first All-Star game was a sign of things to come. Shaq wasn't going to be just another player. He was going to be a force, a showman, a fan favorite. He didn't just belong among the stars, he was already one of them. As the years went by, Shaquille O'Neal didn't just remain a regular at the All-Star game, he became the main event. Year after year, no matter what team he was playing for or what city was hosting, all eyes were on Shaq. He was the show. And he knew it. The crowd didn't just expect dunks from Shaq, they expected a performance. And he delivered. Whether it was dancing during pre-game introductions, cracking jokes with teammates on the bench, or throwing down rim-rattling dunks that shook the entire arena, Shaq brought something that most players couldn't: pure entertainment. But don't let the fun fool you. Behind the smiles and antics was still a dominant force on the floor. In each All-Star appearance, he pushed the pace, controlled the paint, and brought that same intensity that made him unstoppable in regular season games. He didn't coast, he competed. And every time he stepped onto that court, he made it clear: if the fans were going to vote him in, he was going to give them a show. In one memorable All-Star game, Shaq bulldozed his way to the rim, shrugging off defenders like they were nothing. Then, out of nowhere, he whipped a no-look outlet pass to a streaking Tony Parker, catching the entire defense sleeping. It was classic Shaq, a mix of power and flair, brute force with a touch of finesse. Moments later, he was doing push-ups on the hardwood after a dunk, flexing, smiling, and sending the crowd into a frenzy. Shaq didn't just play the game, he understood the moment. He made highlight reels not just with his plays, but with his personality. He didn't need to be the leading scorer. He didn't need the most minutes. But he always had the biggest presence. By the mid-2000s, Shaq had transformed the All-Star game into something bigger than just East versus West. It was a celebration of basketball, and he was its biggest ambassador. He knew that fans tuned in not just to see great basketball, they wanted joy, energy, fun. And that's exactly what he brought. For Shaq, All-Star Weekend wasn't just a break in the season. It was a stage. And every year, he made sure to steal it. There were All-Star games where Shaq came to entertain. And then there were nights when he came to dominate, to remind everyone that behind the humor and charisma was a player built for greatness. On the biggest stage, surrounded by the league's best, Shaquille O'Neal didn't just belong. He stood above them all. Literally and figuratively. Take 2004, for example. The All-Star Game in Los Angeles. The crowd was buzzing, the stars were out, and Shaq, now in a Lakers uniform, put on an absolute clinic. He dropped 24 points, pulled down 11 rebounds, and walked away with the All-Star MVP trophy. But it wasn't just about the stat line. It was about how he did it. Back to the basket power moves. Quick spins around defenders. Rebounds ripped out of the sky. He blocked shots with force, scored with flair, and celebrated like a giant who knew the moment was his. And it was. The 2004 MVP was more than a trophy. It was a statement that, even among the elite, Shaq could rise above and take over. But perhaps the most poetic All-Star moment came 5 years later, in 2009. By then, Shaq had already played for multiple franchises, racked up championships, and become a cultural icon. That night, the game gave fans something they hadn't seen in years: Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, together again. Teammates for one night, side by side on the court, feeding off each other's energy, like it was 2002 all over again. The chemistry was undeniable. Shaq hit the floor dancing during intros, and once the game tipped off, he turned back the clock, blocking shots, throwing down alley-oops, even pulling off a behind-the-back pass that left everyone stunned. It was vintage Diesel. Effortless. Powerful. And, of course, hilarious. When the final buzzer sounded, Shaq and Kobe were named co-MVPs of the 2009 All-Star Game. A full-circle moment. Two legends, once fractured, now celebrated together. The basketball world watched in awe as they held up the trophies, smiled for the cameras, and closed the night on a note that couldn't have been scripted better. These weren't just highlights, they were memories, markers of Shaq's unique place in NBA history. He wasn't just a big man with big numbers. He was a moment maker, a player who could shift the energy of the entire building just by stepping on the court. When Shaquille O'Neal locked in during the All-Star game, it wasn't just about personal glory. It was about giving fans something they'd never forget: power, performance, and presence, all wrapped into one unstoppable force. As the years went on, the NBA changed. New stars rose, styles evolved, and the game became faster, flashier, more global than ever. But one thing remained the same. When All-Star Weekend rolled around, the presence of Shaquille O'Neal was still larger than life. Even in his later years, when he was no longer the most dominant player on the court, Shaq still owned the moment. The smile was still there. The jokes were still flowing. The crowd still lit up whenever his name was announced. He might not have been jumping as high or running quite as fast, but none of that mattered. Because Shaq was the show. In one of his final All-Star appearances, he danced onto the court during introductions, literally. Dressed in a mask, busting out moves with backup dancers, Shaq made it clear he was going to enjoy every second of it. The arena erupted. It wasn't just basketball anymore, it was theater, comedy, culture. And Shaq was at the center of it all. Even in limited minutes, he gave the fans something to cheer for. A no-look pass here, a vintage spin move there, a celebration that reminded everyone why he had become so beloved. He didn't need 30 points to dominate the night. He just needed the spotlight, and he always knew how to own it. And when the end came, it wasn't with a tearful speech or a dramatic goodbye. It was simple. Shaq stood at midcourt, looked around at the packed arena, and flashed that grin one last time. Maybe this was his final All-Star game. Maybe it wasn't, but if it was, he said, "It'll be a hell of a DVD." That moment captured everything about him. The humor, the heart, the humility. Shaquille O'Neal never tried to be perfect. He just tried to be himself. And in doing that, he became something more than a basketball player. He became a legend. His All-Star legacy isn't measured in just points, rebounds, or MVP trophies, though he has plenty of those. It's measured in memories, in the joy he brought to fans, in the way he made even the greatest athletes in the world laugh, celebrate, and just enjoy the game again. From rookie phenom to seasoned veteran, Shaq made every All-Star game a moment to remember. He broke records, broke rims, and broke the mold of what a big man could be. And when the lights dimmed, he didn't fade away. He left the game with the same energy he entered it with: big, bold, unforgettable. That's the legacy of Shaquille O'Neal at the All-Star game. Not just a player, a presence, a performer, a once-in-a-generation force who made the NBA's brightest stage even brighter.